personal comments. So I'm going to read this now. So the small exam room was hot and crowded with a large family who had driven for over an hour to get to our office. Our translator turned to Dr. Zananti. She says the pills are expensive, so they've been cutting them in half to make them last longer. I could see the frustration on Dr. Zananti's face. He gave them a calm lecture on why the patient, a boy with recurrent seizures, needed to be given his medication as prescribed. After Dr. Zananti dictated the interaction in his office, he turned to me and asked, "So what did you learn from that interaction?" How could I answer that in a single sentence? "Brian, come get your snake out of the TV room," I heard my mom shout. It wasn't the first time that snake found its way out of its cage, and my keen senses could pick up on the agitation in my mother's voice. It was through wildlife that I came to love biology. I was mesmerized by the complexity and the diversity of life, and when asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, I answered a bugologist. My father was the president of a charity, and I came to understand the inequality which pervades our system volunteering with him. I saw people with disabilities struggling to function in our society, parents unable to buy their children presents at Christmas, and people with mental health issues living in our streets. When I was a child, my father suffered a stroke. New to the machinations of a hospital, the sterilized and uniformed hallways seemed an endless maze as I navigated them. This is the part where I don't cry. When I entered his room, I encountered a half-human version of my father. His head was shaved, his face was red, his eyes bulged, and an army of wires entangled his body. My father stared at me and opened his mouth to speak, but his neurological network was a shambles. He looked frightened, and tears ran down his face as he was unable to say my name. As he stabilized, the maze of the hospital grew familiar to me. My father and I would sit together, and I would show him how to read children's books. His recovery fascinated and inspired me. In high school, I entered the class of a brilliant but difficult teacher named Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez was a neurosurgeon before becoming our teacher, but made certain mistakes that led to the loss of his license. He saw how much I love biology and encouraged me to pursue a career in medicine. He called me out of the other classes to give me pop anatomy quizzes, assigned me students to tutor, and referred to me as Dr. Young. After school, he described to me the lifestyle of a physician and the path a student needs to take in order to become one. My family's financial situation drove my father to stop taking one of his medications without alerting his physician, and he was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. It was the same problem I would see in other disadvantaged families, parents dividing their children's pills to make them last longer. This experience strengthened my resolve to provide affordable health care for the financially insecure, or for financially insecure people. Shadowing a magnanimous young neurologist, dang, did he just use magnanimous? Dang. Young neurologist named William Zananti solidified this passion and brought in my understanding of the role a doctor plays in a community. I observed Dr. Zananti as he performed minor surgeries, applied tests, and analyzed results. He showed me the importance of being passionate about one's diagnosis, compassionate with unaffected analysis, and being able to reason with violent patients. I saw my father in patients who were scared and wanted to improve their cognition despite adversity. I worked as a retinal technician during college, and I loved to see my patients grow and improve over time. When working there, I observed Dr. Michael Furlong perform LASIK surgery and was thrilled to see patients sitting up clearly for the first time in their lives. I can never forget the happiness on their faces as they gave Dr. Furlong a big hug. I knew I wanted to provide a force in people's lives, a force of good in people's lives like that. Following college, I began working with a talented ophthalmologist named Dr. Kristen Alleman. One post-operative cataract patient I worked with was unable to see beyond 5 feet on Tuesday, but by Wednesday could see 20/20. After a successful operation, Dr. Allman sauntered past me smiling, flipped 2 thumbs up, and exclaimed, "That's why this is the best job ever." In our waiting area, a binder sits packed full of cards sent to Dr. Allman from people whose lives have been transformed by his skill. Seeing the wonderful outcomes of complex procedures illuminated in a slit lamp before me, or contemplating the source of rare pathology, accelerated my passion to become a medical doctor. My work with Dr. Allman was fantastic, but during the COVID-19 pandemic, I was furloughed and needed to seek other work. Now, I work at a biotechnology startup designing state-of-the-art COVID-19 test devices using solid-state nanopore technology. I've learned how engaging and fun it is to be a professional scientist, and how beautiful it is to see many brilliant people working synchronously towards a common goal. Beyond the knowledge and appreciation for research I have obtained in our lab, working in biotechnology has reinforced an important lesson for me. Each day of my career, I want to see patients and practice medicine. So some things that you might have come across during that I think might be helpful for any of you. First of all, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you didn't, that sucks. Get off my channel. Go away. It's me, homie. But some things that I'm so sorry. So some things that you might want to include that are inside of my essay that might be really good for you are just like basic forms of imagery. So if I go into the beginning of the personal comments there, you'll notice that I put that the exam room, small exam room, was hot, it was crowded. I know that we're limited on the amount of words that we could use, but at the same time, we really need to pick our words carefully. We need to actually engage this person. And one thing that you'll come across from a lot of people who are instructing people on how to go into medical school application is using a hook. So you need something interesting in that first couple lines, or else the person's going to be bored to death by your application. And I'm not saying mine is the best in the world, but it worked, right? It got me in front of several admissions committees. So I want you to put things in there that is actually evoking the senses. Small exam room, it was hot, it was crowded, a calm lecture, the look on the doctor's face, things that you can see in your mind when you're talking about this, right? And then, so I kind of jump around too. So just like a lot of times in people's YouTube videos, they'll change the frame of reference. I was trying to change the reference immediately, also to try and get somebody's attention. Brian, come get your snake out of your TV room. You're like, what the heck? We're talking about a snake in the TV room, like suddenly? So hopefully that serves as kind of a frame shift, right? Frame shift because I was probably mutated at that age. Boom, biologist jokes. See if you can pick up on that one. So yeah, and then from there it's kind of just rolling with things. I'm trying not to really brag about anything. I had some bragging in an early version of this. I threw it out. If there's something in your essay that you feel like probably shouldn't be in there, I'd go with erring on the side of that and not go into it. So an example of that, I remember I talked about some stuff about one of the doctors that I was with, and it was kind of like it showed that I kind of had doubt about going to medical school. So some things that you don't want to include in your medical school personal essay, in my opinion, are things that make them worry about your mental health. So you want to show that you have strong mental health. Obviously, like, there's a lot of different ways. I don't want to be insensitive to people who have mental health issues or mental health, mental health conditions. I want to just say that, like, the people who are letting you into medical school want to ensure that you have the stability to get through the programs. So whatever you're doing to ensure that you're able to work functionally as a doctor, like, you could talk about that. However, I wouldn't, talk about it in detail if it makes them worry that you're going to drop out of the program in any way. So I avoided doing that. And then moreover, I didn't really brag about any of my accomplishments, so I wasn't talking about how great of grades I got or anything like that. I think it's important to talk about what you're interested in, but I don't think it's that great of a thing to talk about excelling above other people. Sorry, that's not a fun thing to talk about, either of those topics. Things that evoke, like, emotion are good, but if you, you may be asked about a lot of these things. So if you are going into the interview, I would recommend that you have enough ability to actually speak about the topic without bursting into tears. So a lot of these formative things that happen to us are really emotional, and they do make us want to cry. Like that story that I had with my father. The story with my father makes me want to cry every time I read it, because I starkly see that image of him sitting in that hospital bed, and no one else on earth will ever have seen that. See that, like, as my father, though a lot of people have similar experiences, but just that memory just brings tears to my eyes, right? And you want to be able to talk to the admissions committee about that without bursting into tears. And they did ask me about this during my interview at the University of Iowa, Carver College of Medicine, and I did almost start crying. I had to hold it together. It was hard. I think they want to know that you have the ability to discuss things that are emotionally salient and difficult and have the ability not to cry. So just a piece of advice there. So I think a lot of these things are pretty common to a lot of us, being in high school, having a teacher that's a pretty formative experience. just tell your unique story. Like, that's it. Like, tell your unique story. What are some other things? So the other way that I wrote this essay, in case you were wondering, is I went way over the amount. It was pathetic, guys. I forget exactly what I did wrong, but I ended up writing like 4 times as long an essay as I was supposed to. I like thought it said characters in one way, but it was like, I pretty much wrote like way more pages than I needed to. And it took me months just to work it down to get it to this size. And I couldn't have had something better happen to me, because when that happened, I was actually able to take something big and carve it down. Like, you take a piece of marble and carve it down into a statue. It was a lot easier for me to do that than to try and fit all of this stuff initially into the size, which I think is too small. And I think a lot of us think it's too small. And as you're writing these essays, you're gonna be like, this is too damn small, dude. It's too damn small, dude. So you can quote me on that. It's too damn small, dude. So write too much, write more than you need to, and then whittle it down. That will give you the ability to carve out anything you don't want, anything superfluous. You could honestly get as many brains on this as you can. I can't even tell you how many of my friends have read this, guys. So just get this to your family members, get this to your advisors, get this to your teachers. They want to help you. They understand how important this is in your life and how this is going to set the trajectory for the rest of it. So make a big old essay, send it out to them. They're your friends. They love you. They have to read it, probably, unless they're slackers, which a lot of them were, and I don't know if they ended up reading it. But I will say, if you get more minds on it, then they can help you whittle it down. Just say, hey, I'm going to send this to you. Don't send them the original, right? You're going to make them a new one. Send it to them and say, hey, can you please just like highlight anything that you think doesn't need to be there, or something along those lines. And they will do a pretty good job. Like, other human beings are pretty good at looking at this objectively, and you're pretty much not. You are looking at this like Brian looking at his dad, like Brian going into these operations, like, that's just not going to provide an objective lens. I bet if I asked you guys about this, you'd be able to provide me with a bunch of stuff that I don't actually need in this paper, but I put in there anyway. And I'm sorry that I read it to you and I wasted your time. Okay, besides that, is there anything else that I want to talk about with regards to this? Be positive. That's the other thing. Definitely be positive. These people are going to have to deal with you for 4 to 7 years, right? They want somebody who's positive. Put a positive spin on it. Talk about what you've learned. Just make it sound like you're somebody you want to spend 4 years with, right? I don't want to spend 4 years with you if you're making an essay about like a ton of depressing stuff and you provide like no inspiration or happiness. Like, you gotta like sprinkle in there like something to make it an actual enjoyable thing to read, right? So like sprinkle in how things are good, like beautiful things you've seen, like the little story that I gave here. Dr. Alleman's doctor that I used to work with, when he walked past me, this dude was a serious surgeon. And when he walked past me, like skipping past me practically, and was like, this is the best job ever. Like, that's the cutest thing in the world, right? So I want you to have something like that in there. Okay, and the next thing is tell stories. Human beings are so attached to stories, because all day I could talk about like, oh, in this country, this is a problem. Like underrepresented, like you could say like minorities getting inadequate health care, and like the necessity for like a translator in this like exam room in this poor family, and like I can tell you that those are problems, right? I can tell you that these are problems, but when I actually provide it to you in a story, it does 2 things. A, it engages all those parts of your mind that are actually forming an image. And otherwise, you're not forming any image if I'm just feeding you statistics. And the second thing that it's doing is it's actually providing you with evidence that I've experienced it. So come up with little stories. I don't want to hear about how, oh, I did all this research, and like this research was fantastic, and I did it for 5 years. Like, that's fantastic. That's great. They did that research, and I'm impressed, and it's cool. However, if you're like, I remember this specific project that we had in which I was staying up like so late, like getting my business done in the lab, and I spent like all this time extracting this rare kind of DNA from this specific kind of slug that grows in the Maldives. Like, I'm like, whoa, that is so much interesting stuff that we could talk about. And the admissions committee, they're going to read this and they're going to have questions for you. So write about something that's a personal experience, give good little stories, get them roped up inside of the topic, and then you can boom, hit them with it. Yeah, I'm going to be a great doctor. Yeah, I'm going to take care of people. Yeah, you should let me into your school. Yeah, I'm a positive human being that you could spend 4 to 7 years with. And the 7 years, I was thinking, like, a lot of people end up doing residencies at their medical schools that they do. So that's where the 7 years thing. I'm not saying that you're going to fail your classes so oftentimes that you're going to need to start from the beginning over and over again until you get to 7 years. Unless you need that, and that's totally fine. I gotta say, like, everybody has their own path. And what else do we want to talk about? Yeah, guys, be honest, be open, don't cry. Try not to cry. I don't know, I didn't cry, and if maybe if I did cry, they would have let me into more schools or something. But I don't think that's true. Okay, human beings, much love to you. I appreciate you coming to my channel and checking stuff out. If you have any questions, please post them below. If you have any criticisms, comments, go ahead and post them below as well. And get in contact with me if you need any help with your medical school application. And much love.